Welcome back to my channel. I'm Amanda Shee. I'm an anesthesiologist and intensivist. Today we are going to be talking about night shift. As a resident, I will say that I loathe night shifts. I hated night float. I hated night shifts. I was really happy that I was at a program that had 24-hour call rather than a week of nights, because of the ability to actually have a real day away from the hospital, at least 24 hours to either catch up on sleep or take care of other types of errands that need to happen during business hours. That during night float, you find that even though you have designated hours, most of the time you find that either you have to go in earlier, you're stuck there later because of other things, and then it's a never-ending cycle. And you're actually home for less time than if you did a full 24 hours, in which, at least in anesthesia, we had opportunities to potentially take a nap, since if there's no operating room cases going, the anesthesiologist can use the call room and sleep until there are cases that are going on. As a fellow, I did a lot of nights. Our program is set up that we would have a string of days and then typically a week of nights, and then have some reprieve with some non-clinical time. And I'll say that as a fellow, I dreaded going into my week of nights every time. There was never was there a time that I went into nights and I was like, yes, I'm so excited. That being said, there is a different culture with night float, and with kind of if you're in medicine and you hear about and you're working night float, typically, you'll hear things like day team problem. That's something that does happen in terms of nighttime. We find that our staffing is not as much as during the day. Our resources aren't as much as during the day. So there are only certain acute problems that we make sure to address, or if we have new patients that come, and oftentimes that takes up a lot of energy and manpower. And so it's a different culture at night for sure. And there's definitely some positives to being on night float, but there's something about working at night that totally screws everything up. Not only is my sleep totally disrupted, I find that it takes me sometimes days to weeks to get back to a regular daytime schedule. As a result, my mood is oftentimes depressed as well anytime I've done a long string of nights. But on the flip side, now that I'm an attending, I don't do as long of strings of nights anymore. So typically my nights are like 3 nights in a row, which I'm finding now that I've done a few months of this is much more doable than what I had done in the past as a resident and as a fellow. Hi guys, I am post-call today and just wanted to talk about some of the things that go on with night shift. So post-call can mean a couple things. Generally, when we are post-call for a 24-hour, we could be considered post-call, or an overnight shift in a way is post-call. So I was overnight last night. So it was 5 p.m. On service to 7 a.m. when I sign out, which is a 14-hour shift, which is quite long. And I was working in the ICU. I don't do operating room call unless I elect to, but my requirement is in the ICU. So one of the big challenges with overnights is figuring out how long to sleep. So, I got really lucky last night. I was able to lay down for a little bit, but when I got home, I was pretty awake. So I listened to lecture, and it's a Thursday. So we had grand round. So I listened to that and then took a nap, woke up, and now I'm like, well, so do I eat? I don't know. Anyway, my body's all like, what did you just do? The problem with nights as well is that at night, generally the schedule is I go in, I get my sign out, I kind of write up my notes, I check in on all my patients, and we round at about 8 p.m. So the nurses sign out at 7 p.m. So we have to wait till our overnight nurses are on. And that generally means that I start rounding at about 8 p.m. Our hospital has something called 9 o'clock meal. So at 9 o'clock, I generally take a break from rounds and send the residents out to go get a meal and maybe sit down and enjoy that meal for a little bit, and then we come back. So sometimes generally rounds don't end till about, I think at best I'll finish at like 11 p.m. But sometimes if we get really, really busy, it could go into like 1, 2 a.m. And generally around that time, I'm like, okay, when we're done with rounds, we can all sit down and have a meal together, assuming it's not crazy busy. So we end up eating at sometime between 11 p.m. and like 3 a.m. So the schedule is all kinds of weird. And so that's one of the things that really I struggle with when it comes to nights, because wow, like my body really hates being out of its normal schedule. And as you guys might have seen from my other video on a day in the life in the ICU, typically I wake up at 4-something a.m. I kind of do stuff in the morning, like work out. I have my own little routine. I go to work, I come home, I eat something, I maybe get a little other work done, and then I go to bed kind of ridiculously early. So like sometime between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. Sometimes if I'm really exhausted from a week of work, it's like 8 p.m. So on nights, I have this like, the first day of my nights is weird because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wake up, I'll sleep in a little. So I'll sleep in until like 7 a.m., 8 a.m., maybe 9 a.m. and then have a normal day of getting stuff done at home, and then go to work that night, and then kind of convince my body that this is just gonna be like a 24-hour or like a weird like 18 to 20 hour day, and then come back home in the morning at 7 a.m., take a nap, and then try to like switch to a night schedule, except I'm only on nights for a couple nights, so I have to really not totally switch back. Anyway, I'm ranting. The point is, night shift equals a lot of crazy schedule changes. So yeah, we will kind of peek in on little parts of the evening and go from there. So I'm walking to work. It's late in the afternoon. It's kind of weird to walk to work when everyone else is going home.
Your first and last name.
Amanda, she.
I'm logging you in as Amanda, she.
So I've come to work a little earlier for my night shift. I went to go pick up some treats and other kinds of things just because I feel like it's important to... Little chocolates. These are my favorite, by the way. So I like to be able to bring some treats in overnight just to keep the night going and give myself something to look forward to and share with the unit, especially around the holidays. I think it's really important to try to bring some cheer around, and even after the holidays when we hit a really sad February. Also went to go get some caffeine. I'm finding now that coffee is starting to give me more and more heartburn when I just drink it black, so I'm doing a matcha latte today, and I've given myself a little bit of a sweeter treat by adding vanilla. So I will work right now on kind of seeing a quick review of the patients and setting up my list so I get to know everyone and can print it out and be ready to get sign out. I got these insoles from my Calzuros because mine were beat up, so I have a separate video that I'm going to go over what shoes I wear in the hospital, but I'm excited to throw these in and use them tonight. These are how my Calzuros look before I put some new insoles in. Here they are with the new insoles. Okay, we are going to be starting rounds. You want to wave, guys? Hi. These are our lovely residents for the night. We are gonna get started.
At night, our team is smaller and we typically have 2 residents, a fellow, and an attending rounding with the nurses. In this ICU, we have up to 20 patients to care for, so we rely on our ICU nurses to be our eyes and ears at the bedside. At rounds, we come up with a plan for the evening, and our nurses carry that out. I'm so lucky to be able to work with some excellent nurses. We also have the pleasure of working with respiratory therapists. They play such an important role, especially during the COVID pandemic, with vent management and making sure we are providing safe ventilator settings. This is our emergency airway pager. It goes off when a patient needs to be intubated or if there is a code in the hospital.
Now I'm walking home. I was able to nap last night. When I got up, I walked around, made sure everyone looked good, and then signed out at about 7 a.m. So I hope this was a fun video for you guys to follow along, and I'll see you guys next time.